Welcome to the one and only video on differentiation for your science methods course. There are two objectives for this video: that you will be able to define differentiation and you will be able to suggest appropriate differentiation techniques for your science lessons. These three terms, differentiation, differentiated instruction, and differentiated learning, refer to the same thing, and there are two principles to remember. First, when you differentiate a lesson, you basically are providing multiple options for learning, and differentiated instruction is for all children. There is a misunderstanding about differentiation, I feel, in that it is not limited to working with special needs children. Now, in this video on differentiation, we will be looking at special situations that may or may not involve special needs children, but never forget that as K-12 teachers, one should differentiate for all children. So what can be differentiated? Content can be differentiated, or the what that is being learned. Now, there also could be content adjustments. So the same content could be learned, but you may adjust the content, for instance, having Braille readers, if you have a visually challenged student in your class. So it's the same content, but there could be some adjustments. The other thing that could be differentiated is the process, the method of learning, or how they will learn the content. And last, product, how the students demonstrate they have met the objective. So let's take each one in turn. When we look at content, or what students can learn, one way to differentiate is to provide multiple texts across reading levels. And this is where children's literature books come in, because you can get a first grade level book and a fourth grade level book that may be covering the same content. Provide topic differentiation. And here is an example from an article that a middle school teacher wrote. Basically, he was having the students investigate or research diseases, and he grouped the diseases in terms of how easy it was to find information on it. So group one might be given to students who might be more challenged than those that would get group 3 diseases, in which they may be well apt to research different diseases. You can also vary resources. Have a book, have a speaker come in, a DVD, a YouTube video, etc. You can also do what we call compact the curriculum. Basically, you pre-assess the students and you skip what a student knows. So you just focus on those areas in which there is need. You could vary the inquiry context from guided to open, and let me explain. So let's say you're going to have the students do an experiment. With guided, teacher guided, the teacher sets up the experiment and the students execute. Or with somewhat guided, the teacher may provide the question, but the students set up the experiment. Or with totally open inquiry, like we did with the FAST plants, you had to develop the question and the entire experiment. So you could actually vary that context. You could also vary the content based on interest, on the student's interest. With process, how the content is taught, you could use authentic hands-on, minds-on inquiry learning that incorporates visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learning, so you're very attentive to learning style. You provide multiple ways in giving directions, auditorily, written, or in picture format. You could offer tiered assignments, or this is also called scaffolding, or having different levels of complexity building on one another. Consider learning centers and stations at which students explore topics, and here is an example in which they would go to the different centers and focus their learning within that area, all on one topic. Now, you can also see that this is also differentiating the product, because what the students produce at each center would be slightly different. You can offer learning contracts, provide students with an opportunity to work somewhat independently on material that is largely teacher-directed. A timeline and agreement is signed. You could anchor activities connecting old ideas to new learning. You could develop graphic organizers that help students organize the content as they are also learning it. In terms of product, how students show what they know and can do. Choices of product presentation allow students to use varied modes of showing that they have met the lesson's objectives, such as presenting orally, developing a video, drawing a poster, building a model. And here is another teacher's idea in which actually they have put down the various products that could be done focused on Bloom's taxonomy, from knowledge level, which would be just showing basic fact and recall information, in which the students could choose that they would get at the most 65 points out of 100 or a D, all the way up to showing some project ideas that would show analysis, synthesis, or evaluation levels in which they could obtain that A. Notice at the bottom of this, there is parent permission, so the parents would have to agree that their student, their child, is picking a certain grade level that they are looking for. So this could be choices of product presentation. Also, you could do evaluation by self, and others could be part of their grade. And of course, authentic assessment whenever possible, having the product represent what they are learning, such as planning and conducting an experiment. Now we're going to focus differentiation in special situations and some considerations that you should look at with each of these situations. Some of them will involve special needs students, some do not. But again, what I want to do first is review two groupings of interventions that may be specified in a student's IEP or under Section 504. You might have accommodations listed, especially under Section 504, but you could have it in the IEP. And these would be services or support to help a student fully access the subject matter instruction, as well as to validly demonstrate what he or she knows. An accommodation does not change the content or subject matter, but there could be content adjustments. I mentioned the example of having a Braille reader. So there could be some content adjustments, but the same content is expected for the student to learn. So basically under accommodations, you might have process accommodations could be affected. Modifications would basically be in the IEP. These are curriculum modifications made when a student either is taught something different from the rest of the class or is taught the same information but at a different level of complexity. So here a modification does change the content, the process, and the product as well. So think about, you need to be aware of whether you have children that have an IEP or Section 504 accommodations, and whether they have accommodations or modifications, and what that means in terms of differentiation. Now remember, I am reviewing these two special needs situations, but differentiation involves all students. So as I cover the next few slides, consider how these techniques could benefit all children. So let's look at students with visual, hearing, or physical challenges. With the content, you could have reading material, could be audio taped, or available in large type font or in Braille. There could be adjustments to resources such as putting liquid glue to raise the print of graphs or diagrams, or having anatomically correct models such as fish mounts so that they could feel them and see them very easily. In terms of process, proximity to the teacher is important, and also to have other children face, such as a child that has hearing challenges when speaking, would be important. Use of technology in the field, such as meters and probes that have audible readout, talking thermometers, portable word processors, and notebooks, digital voice recorders, digital cameras. You can have study buddies who can help these children, these students, take notes. With product, voice recognition software to dictate write-ups like Dragon Speech. In fact, when I broke my arm, Dragon Speech helped me tremendously to continue to work. Let's look at attention challenges, students with attention challenges. In terms of content, you could find ways to integrate topics that are interesting to the students. In process, you could break large chunks of instruction into smaller parts. Have students repeat directions in their own words. Use laboratory time for one-on-one instruction. Speaking with a student individually is a powerful tool for focusing attention. Encourage expression of opinion and discussion to keep them focused, but check that they do not dominate the discussion. Experiment with music during lab exercises. Students may find that quiet classical background music aids their concentration. Consider seating arrangements. There is no right seat, so you will have to sort of try things out. A student sitting in front might prove a serious distraction to him or herself in the class, while this student may experience increased success if seated away from high trafficked areas. Incorporate what is called body posture changes, such as having them use a ball as a seat, or you probably have seen some children that are wearing weight jackets that may help them in terms of their attention. Information processing and communication challenges. Communicate information in multiple formats. Students may process information more effectively in an oral or visual or kinesthetic framework. Write lab procedures in large, legible print. The chalkboard or whiteboard or other communication mediums, such as PowerPoint slides, should not be cluttered with irrelevant information. Clearly label laboratory equipment. Color-coding materials may enhance identification. In terms of process, coincide verbal directions with demonstration whenever possible. Develop cue cards which outline in written or pictorial form major procedural steps and prominently display these cards in sequential order. And with product, utilize multiple assessment tools, and you're going to hear this over and over. In terms of students with organizational challenges, maintain a clean, organized laboratory. Clutter is an additional obstacle for students already struggling with organization. Maintain consistent storage spaces, places in the lab for supplies and equipment, and clearly label these stations. In terms of process, establish and constantly reinforce techniques for regular procedures like cleaning and returning lab materials, but also where to place completed assignments, etc. Students with social interaction challenges, create a climate of acceptance by modeling patience and tolerance. Assign laboratory and cooperative learning groups carefully. Students with social interaction challenges should be grouped with students who will allow them to participate and use their strengths. And you as a teacher need to model, and that was in the prior tip, and teach that explicitly. For instance, having assigned roles when you place them in groups, such as someone is the recorder, someone is a timer, etc. Students with timing and making transitions issues, provide initial orientation to laboratory organization, equipment, and procedures. Make this instruction ongoing throughout the year and incorporating new techniques and equipment as needed. Make students aware of time limits before and during laboratory exercises and small group work. Warn students a few minutes before the scheduled ending of an activity. This eases transition from one activity to another and forces the group to come to closure. So let's go over some overall tips, and some of them will be repeats of what I've already mentioned. But with the content, build the lesson from what is already known. That is very helpful for students overall. Integrate units, making the content relevant and applicable to real-world situations. Utilize children's books to support a variety of reading levels. With process, if you have special needs children in your classroom, collaborate with a special educator and team teach if possible. Emphasize hands-on, minds-on learning as much as possible. Use cooperative learning groups. Use visuals such as concept maps and graphic organizers. Where memorization is needed, use mnemonics and study guides to cue the student to relevant information. Like you probably are familiar with My Very Educated Mother just served us 9 pizzas for learning the order of the planets, although Pluto is now in question, or Roy G. Biv is another one. In terms of product, offer varied ways in which they can show their learning. Use authentic assessments, such as actually conducting experiments whenever possible. So this is the end of the video. Overall reminder is that differentiation is simply good teaching. And check yourself now. Are you able to define differentiation? 2, are you able to suggest or highlight appropriate differentiation techniques for your science lessons? Take care.